Ever since I made the Kaiju number 8 versus One Punch Man's Monsters video, people have been asking me non-stop to compare other characters that has monstrous or beastly features against the One Punch Man creatures. We've already done other characters such as Kafka, Sukuna, Solo Leveling's bosses, and Kaido, and suggestions and requests have been rising even higher. So in today's video, since a lot of people have been telling me that I still didn't cover Naruto on this channel, we're finally pitting the nine-tailed beast, aka the Bijou, against One Punch Man's most vicious monsters. Specifically find out what threat level they would be placed at in the One Punch Man verse and which monsters they can and cannot defeat. But before that, make sure to Bijou bomb the subscribe button and the notification bell for more of these matchup videos. Thank you. The Tailed Beasts, Naruto's verse version of nuclear weapons, are creatures made of chakra by the father of all shinobi, the Sage of the Sixth Path. These beasts, despite not completely being evil, are treated as dangerous creatures that needs to be controlled by any means necessary, simply because they harness abnormal reserves of chakra that can pose a threat to any village's existence. So, narratively speaking, it is implied that the number of tails indicates the level of power. The more tails you have, the stronger you are. That's the general belief that we all have simply because of the 9 tails, but the fact still remains that it was actually never confirmed. Hachibi, aka Yuki, kinda scolds the 9 tails for using that poor power scaling logic. In essence, it actually works for the QB, but it doesn't mean it applies to the rest of the beasts. At least the villagers don't seem to think that way, otherwise there would have been a huge dispute between the Kages on which beast they would be taken. Anyways, the point is, other than the 9th and the 8th, who are obviously the strongest, we're not gonna operate as if one is stronger than the other when it comes to the rest of the beasts. Which brings us to this important question of how strong are these tailed beasts? You see, when you think Bijou, despite them having different distinctive specialties, you'll still always think of the tailed beast bomb. Whenever they're pressed or they wanna finish off the fight quickly, they always resort to the Bijou Dama. And despite that being a destructive capacity attack, their physical strength somehow actually scale to it. This is proven by Kyuki, aka Hachibi, tanking his own bomb that was repelled by the 10 tails. That type of explosion packs force relative to that of 35 to 64 gigatons of TNT, making it large island level. You see, realistically speaking, this should be the level of the standard Bijou bomb each beast packs, with the exception being the 9th and the 8th, who packed 12 teratons of TNT in their attempt to stop the 10 tails. This was a combined effort bomb which makes them individually small country level. This is backed up by the fact that a non-charged bomb from the QB was able to match 5 combined charged bombs from the other beasts. And since Kurama at the time of these feats only possessed 50% of his actual strength, his full power should at least be country level, which means that beasts from 1 to 7 can pack island to large island levels of AP and DC, and 8th to 9th can exert small country to country levels of destructiveness and physical strength. Now, before we go to the speed section, there is also an infamous statement from the databook that I'm sure a lot of people would bring up in the comments, which says that Kurama has a powerful force that could easily turn the world to ash. Makes people argue that he's already planetary. However, it's simply the same as the One Piece Whitebeard arguments that is meant to be either hyperbolic or can be done after a long period of time. That's actually besides the fact that the kanji used actually never said word, more so society if you wanna check it out. So at the end of the day, nothing really proves that Kurama can just boom the entire planet. Now, when it comes to speed, considering that the Raikage was the fastest in the world during the first half of the war arc, and the databook suggests that he is operating at near light speed when he performs the lariat with Killer Bee, then that can only mean that the Bijous would all cap at light speed levels. Makes more sense as Naruto after barely dodged a light speed attack from Madara, but that's only when you don't account for multiple contentious databook statements painting multiple characters as light speed timers. And to be frankly honest, despite all of these statements having logical debunking arguments, we'd still be willing to say that the tail beast would be operating from light speed to faster than light levels. Obviously not including Haku's light speed statement, because I really think that that's completely wrong. And with all of this being said, can these tailed beasts compete with One Punch Man's strongest monsters? Since we've already made up to 4 videos explaining the One Punch Man monsters, I've decided today to take a different approach to explain how strong they are. So we're gonna start with dragon level monsters that appeared in the story in chronological order, and I don't mean irrelevant monsters, but more so those who has left a mark. The first one is One Punch Man's Namekian Vaccine Man, who, I kid you not, in the very first panel of this manga was able to produce this much firepower. People say that since his body was steaming, it was a clear indication that he tanked his own bomb. This was capped at 86 megatons of TNT, making him City Plus level in terms of durability and attack potency. However, it's still very important to note that Vaccine Man, while performing these feats, was only operating in his base, as the databook clearly suggests that his transformation elevates his power level much higher. So any multiplier from 2 to a one-shot tier, which is 7.8, would certainly make him a mountain level combatant. Maruguri aka Beefcake, on the other hand, is a character whom I made a recent video about that you should go and check it out. He can basically create a huge crater in a city that was capped at 42 megatons of TNT, making him city level in terms of attack potency. Next is Carnage Kabuto, who is stated to be in an incomparably higher level compared to monsters like Vaccine Man and Maruguri in terms of physical strength, which means this all depends on which multiplier we should give him based on your interpretation of incomparably higher. So if it's a one-shot tier, it would certainly make him island level. However, to be frankly honest, I still to this day question the validity of this statement, so this interpretation could change in the future. After, we have the City Z Meteor that technically isn't really a monster, but is regarded as a threat in the One Punch Man verse. So according to Genos, this was certainly not only going to destroy City Z, that is actually massive, but was actually going to destroy cities that surrounds it. And based on the many calculations of how big the City Z is, this meteor should at least either be large island plus or small country level. Now when it comes to the Cadres, who are the main focus of the Monster Association arc, their scaling ranges from mountain to country level in terms of physical strength and pure destructiveness. You have Vomiter Fury Ugly straight up matches Darkshine's Double Bazooka, who was able to defeat Carnage Kabuto in the audiobooks. Homeless Emperor can also generate bombs that exerts force relative to 4.2 gigatons of TNT, making him island level in terms of destructiveness. And then you have Koketsu, who should be country level for being superior to Z-Series Meteor according to Genesis assessment. These are just the few examples of how strong the Monster Association executives are. Which leads us to talk about the dragon or higher threat level that contains monsters who are much stronger than normal dragons but still weaker than a god level threat. These 10 monsters scale from continental to straight up being planetary and could be even higher. You have the Monster King Orochi, who physically can contain potential energy relative to 5.6 exatons of TNT, making him multi-continental. And then you have Psycho Orochi, who can casually perform an attack that can literally slice continents. These guys on a narrative standpoint are considered relative or inferior to characters like Ocean and Sage Centipede. However, when it comes to the strongest dragon or higher monsters, it really requires no effort to tell that these 5 sits at the top: Genbu, Byaku, Kirin, Monster Garu, and Lord Boros. Now when it comes to speed, a demon level monster called a Awakened Cockroach has a precognition reaction and combat speed, allowing him to react to light speed attacks. Still couldn't predict Orochi's horns that were later dodged by a Garu, who is still very weak compared to what we see after. Narratively speaking, the executives are surely not scared of Orochi, and some even wanted to challenge him, unlike Awakened Cockroach, who is literally a bug to the Monster King, which makes all these characters operate at light speed to faster than light levels. This is obviously without accounting for databook statements and multipliers from Genos dodging lasers confirmed to have the properties of light. And with all of this being said, which monsters can really stand up to the tailed beast? Now to cut to the chase, every tailed beast from 1 to 9 should be considered as a dragon level monster. They all have the abilities and the firepower to annihilate cities and should be much superior to demon level threats. But the main important question is, how would they do against other fellow dragons? So if we assume that every tailed beast can tank their own Bijou bomb, same as Gyuki did against the 10 tails, then most of them should at least be large island level in terms of attack potency, durability, and destructive capacity, which means that characters like Vaccine Man and Maruguri, for the lack of general showing, should not be able to hurt them. Other characters like Carnage Kabuto and most of the cadres who scale to island level or can employ strategies to harm opponents at that tier can at best compete with the weaker tail beasts. Since if you want to be technical about it, if Kurama and Gyuki can output energy much stronger than the rest, it stands to reason that the lower tier tail beast contributes far less power. Still, if someone like Carnage Kabuto or Vomited Fury Ugly were able to match some of the lower beasts, it still would be a fight of extreme difficulties. That's even without accounting for their individual abilities, such as Shukaku's scent coffins that can trap a lot of monsters, Son Goku's lava release that could melt evil natural water in its first stages, Isobu's use of coral that can restrict the enemy's mobility, and many other things of that nature. However, in my opinion, it'd be certainly very entertaining to see a destructiveness fight between some of the tail beasts and Overgrown Rover, continuously blasting each other with their spherical bombs. But the truth be told, that Saitama's pet has never been seen replicating heat equivalent to the Bijou bomb. You can say that maybe, and it's really a big maybe, he can tank them for possessing high level durability that allowed him to withstand a strong punch from Saitama, but at the end of the day, I don't think he'd be able to put down any tail beast with bombs seen on screen. Which brings us to the monster that I think would be able to put a stop to the tail beast dominance. Koketsu. Now hear me out. According to Janos, even after seeing Saitama destroy a large island meteor that threatened multiple cities and Tatsumaki deflecting Boros' ship's cannons, he still believed that a team that includes both Saitama and Tatsumaki is required to even stand a chance against Koketsu. Now Janos for sure is stupid and doesn't know how strong Tatsumaki is, but he should at least be able to scale her attacks against the ship and should know the level of threat Z-City's meteor poses to a lot of cities, which means Koketsu, based on these assessments, should be country level. And by that logic, Kurama would be the only beast that can compete with this monster. As a matter of fact, if you account for Koketsu splitting the cloud's feet and use the time frame of the shockwave expanding in the anime, he'd actually be a tad stronger than the complete 9 tails, which means that this is exactly where every tailed beast would stop in the One Punch Man verse. But aside that, if you have a problem with Janos' credibility in estimating how strong characters are, then Kurama would certainly stop at the likes of Platinum S, whom for the moment is considered as the gateholder for Dragon or higher, which means that Kurama would certainly be a very high Dragon level monster. Now I don't think I need to talk about characters like Orochi, Genbu, Byakuya, Monster Garu, Evil Ocean Water, Sage Centipede, and especially Lord Boros, since these guys would completely toy with Kurama endlessly, unless you think that Kurama is planetary based on that very controversial databook statement. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please consider joining our Discord community. Until next time, please take good care.